She's sitting right next to you, but you've never felt more alone. The silence in the room is heavier than any argument ever was. You finally ask what's wrong, and she gives you that one-word answer you've come to expect. Nothing. But your gut, that primal compass that has guided you your whole life, is telling you that something is deeply wrong. This isn't another video designed to make you paranoid or to point fingers. This is a quiet conversation for men who are tired of the confusion, who feel that slow emotional fade and don't have a name for it. We're not here to just list red flags that send you down a rabbit hole of suspicion. Instead, we're going to understand what that distance truly means, and more importantly, how you can respond with strength and clarity, not desperation or anger. Because what you choose to do next will define not just the future of your relationship, but the future of your own peace. Let's explore this together. All right, let's start with something subtle. It's a feeling you notice in the quiet moments, something you sense more than you see. We'll call it the presence paradox. It's the strange reality of sitting next to someone close enough to touch, yet feeling like they are a million miles away. It isn't about the physical space between you, it's about the emotional space. Emotional presence is that feeling of being truly seen by someone. It's in the way their eyes light up when you walk into a room, the way they listen, not just to your words, but to the meaning behind them. It's the unspoken feeling that you are on the same team, sharing the same world. Now, it's important to be fair. Everyone has off days. A tough week at work, family stress, or just feeling unwell can make anyone seem distant for a little while. That's just life. But what we're talking about here isn't a bad day. It's a change in the emotional climate. It's a pattern that settles in and doesn't leave. Think about it this way. Maybe 6 months ago, you'd be on the couch watching a movie. Without a word, she'd rest her head on your shoulder, or you'd share a laugh at the same silly scene. You weren't just watching a screen, you were sharing a moment, connected. Now, picture the same couch, the same movie playing tonight. But there's an invisible wall running down the middle of the cushions. She's deep into her phone, a faint smile on her face from a text you're not part of. The physical distance between you is only inches, but the emotional distance feels vast and cold. She's there, but she's not with you. And here's the mistake many of us make when we feel that void. We try to fill it. We start talking more, asking more questions, cracking more jokes, desperately trying to get a reaction, to bring back the warmth. But here's a small, important lesson. You can't force a connection. Pushing for attention from someone who is emotionally retreating often makes them pull away even faster. It can feel like neediness, and it drains your own sense of calm. So your first task isn't to frantically try to pull her back. It's simply to notice the shift without panic. It's to understand that you can't control her emotional state, but you can control your own. Instead of pouring your energy into that growing void, you simply hold your ground centered in your own world. Of course, when you feel this gap widening, it's only natural to want to understand why. You start to ask simple, innocent questions, hoping for an answer that will put your mind at ease. But her reaction to those very questions, well, that opens up the second chapter of this story, and it's exactly where we're going next. So you decide to gently probe that silence. You're not accusing, you're not angry, you're just trying to understand. You're reaching for a connection. But what you get back isn't an answer, it's a wall. Defensiveness is a fascinating human behavior. It's almost never about the question being asked. It's a shield for something deeper, often a feeling of guilt, shame, or fear of being discovered. When a person is hiding something, even an innocent question can feel like a bright, interrogating spotlight. And instead of stepping into that light with honesty, their instinct is to attack the bulb itself so they can remain safely in the shadows. Let's make this real. Imagine you ask a simple, curious question, something light and casual, like, "Hey, who were you texting? You were smiling so much just now." In a secure, connected relationship, the answer is usually easy and open. It's an invitation to share. "Oh, it was just my friend Sarah sending me a funny meme about her dog. Here, take a look." The wall is down. You feel included, not excluded. But when that defensive wall is up, the very same question gets a shockingly different response. The tone shifts instantly. Her body tenses. Why? Do I have to tell you everything I'm doing? Can't I just have a conversation without being cross-examined? And just like that, the entire focus of the conversation has been flipped. It's no longer about a simple text message. You are now suddenly in a debate about trust, about privacy, about your supposed jealousy or paranoia. You might even find yourself apologizing and backing down just to keep the peace, even though your original question came from a place of simple curiosity. This brings us to our second lesson. The reaction itself holds more truth than a rehearsed answer ever could. Don't get drawn into the argument they create. That's a diversion tactic. Quietly observe the raw, unfiltered reaction, the anger, the immediate shift in tone, the way they turn the question back on you. That is where the real information lies. It tells you that a sensitive nerve has been struck. This defensiveness is a powerful way to deflect, but sometimes this behavior can evolve into something far more insidious. It's the point where they stop just shielding themselves from your questions and begin actively trying to distort your perception of reality, making you feel like you're the one who's losing your mind. This is where we meet the twin poisons of any relationship, and it's what we need to uncover next. We've talked about that wall of defensiveness. Now we venture into a deeper, more disorienting territory. This is where the very ground beneath your feet can feel like it's starting to shift, where you begin to question your own mind. First, let's talk about gaslighting. It's a slow, insidious form of manipulation. The goal isn't to win an argument, it's to make you doubt your own perceptions, your memory, and ultimately, your sanity. It's when you clearly remember a conversation and she looks at you with a calm, convincing face and says, "I never said that. You must be imagining things." Or when you express a valid feeling of being hurt and the response is, "You're just being overly sensitive. You always blow things out of proportion." It's a subtle but relentless chipping away at your reality. But if gaslighting is the attempt to warp your mind, contempt is the signal that in her mind, you no longer hold the same value. Renowned relationship researcher Dr. John Gottman calls contempt the single greatest predictor of divorce. He refers to it as the kiss of death for a relationship because it's a form of poison. And it rarely shows up as a big explosive fight. It's the subtle eye roll while you're sharing something you're passionate about. It's the sarcastic tone that drips with mockery. It's the joke that feels less like humor and more like a small, sharp knife. Imagine this scenario. You share a personal win with her, something you're proud of. Instead of celebrating with you, she says with a smirk, "Oh, that's nice. I guess all that time you spend on your little hobby is finally paying off." When she sees the hurt on your face and you say, "That felt like a put-down," the gaslighting kicks in immediately. "Wow, relax. I was just teasing. Why do you always have to be so serious?" You see the pattern? A moment of contempt followed by a dose of gaslighting that makes you the problem for reacting to it. The common mistake here is to try and argue your way out of it. You try to explain your feelings with logic. You try to prove that your reaction is valid. But you're trying to solve an issue of respect with the tools of reason, and it will never work. This leads us to a pivotal lesson. Gaslighting and contempt are not communication problems, they are respect problems. You cannot fix a fundamental lack of respect by being nicer or by making a better argument. You can only decide that you will not live inside a reality where you are belittled and made to feel crazy. You don't have to fight back. You just have to refuse to accept their version of events as the truth. This erosion of respect, this quiet rewriting of your reality, almost always coincides with the building of a new separate one, a life that often exists on a locked screen and in a future that you are slowly being edited out of. And that is exactly where we turn our attention now. So where does this new separate reality that we just talked about begin to take root? It grows in two places, one you can physically see and one you can only feel. The first is in the palm of her hand, and the second is in the future you once thought you would share. Let's start with her phone. Think back. Her phone used to be just an object, a tool she'd leave on the coffee table or ask you to grab for her. Now, it seems to have a heartbeat of its own. It's become a vault. It's always flipped face down on the table. It goes with her from room to room, even on a short trip to the bathroom. You might hear a notification from across the room, but she doesn't check it until she thinks you're not looking. The phone has transformed from a simple device into a private portal, a gateway to a world you are no longer invited into. This isn't about a healthy need for privacy anymore, it's about a wall of secrecy. Privacy is having your own thoughts. Secrecy is actively hiding your actions. And as that digital wall gets higher, the horizon of the future you once looked at together begins to shrink. The easy, flowing conversations about where we will be in 5 years have stopped. The casual mentions of that trip you always dreamed of taking next summer are met with a vague, non-committal, yeah, maybe, we'll see. The future, which was once an exciting project you were building together, now feels like it's become her solo project, and you haven't been given the blueprints. Let me paint a clearer picture for you. You're sitting at dinner, and you bring up the idea of visiting your family for the holidays, something you've done together for years. Instead of the usual excitement, she just shrugs and says, I don't know, let's not plan that far ahead right now. All while her phone, sitting face down next to her plate, vibrates with a message that she quickly silences without ever breaking eye contact with her food. You see, the two realities are happening at the same time, a physical wall around her phone and an emotional wall around your future. This brings us to a simple and oddly liberating truth. When someone truly wants you in their future, you will know it. You won't have to beg for a spot. You won't have to decode vague answers or wonder why you weren't included in a story she told about her week. Their plans will naturally and enthusiastically have a space in them that is shaped just for you. If you constantly have to guess where you stand, it's very likely you are not standing on solid ground. Observing all of this, the emotional distance, the defensiveness, the digital walls, is a critical first step. But looking outward is only half of the equation. Before we draw any final conclusions, it's essential that we do something most of us forget to do. We have to be willing to turn that spotlight, just for a moment, away from her and back onto ourselves. And that moment of honest self-reflection, that is where your true power begins. The self-audit. Is it all her? Or is there a you in this equation? This next step is perhaps the hardest one to take, but it is by far the most powerful. It's the moment where you stop being a passive observer of her behavior and become the active architect of your own character. We're going to do a brief, honest self-audit. And let me be crystal clear about this. The purpose here is not to find excuses for her actions or to blame yourself. She is responsible for her choices, period. The purpose of this is to reclaim your own power, because a man who isn't right with himself cannot build a healthy, stable connection with anyone else. So, just for a moment, let's ask the hard questions, with complete privacy and honesty just for you. First, have you become complacent? Have you fallen into a routine, assuming she would always be there, and perhaps stopped putting in the kind of effort you did in the beginning? The small compliments, the thoughtful gestures, the simple act of putting your phone down when she is telling you about her day, have those things quietly faded over time? Second, have you been truly present yourself? We've talked a lot about her emotional distance, but what about your own? Have you been so consumed by work, stress, or your own goals that you've been living alongside her as more of a roommate than a partner? Have you created a safe space for her to be open and vulnerable, or have your own walls been up? And the final, most important question: are you living a life that you yourself are proud of? A life that is full of your own purpose, your own passions, and your own standards, completely independent of her approval? Or have you, over time, made her the center of your emotional world, the sole source of your happiness and validation? Here's the profound lesson that comes from this self-audit. Your sense of wholeness cannot be conditional on another person's affection. Whether this relationship can be repaired or not, your ultimate journey is to become a man who is so grounded in his own purpose and self-respect that while he wants a partner to share his life with, he doesn't fundamentally need one to feel complete. That is the foundation of true, unshakable strength. Once you've taken this honest look inward, you can approach the situation from a place of centered strength, not quiet desperation. You're no longer just reacting to her distance, you're acting from a place of solid self-awareness. And from this grounded place, you are finally ready to have the conversation that this has all been leading to. Not a fight, not an interrogation, but a calm and direct quest for clarity. And how to have that talk without starting a war is exactly what we will cover right now. This is the moment of truth. But approaching this conversation like a bull in a china shop will only shatter what little connection might be left. Approaching it with calm, deliberate strength, however, can finally bring the clarity you need. This isn't about confrontation. It's about clarification. The most powerful tool you have for this talk is a simple shift in language called the I statement. Instead of starting sentences with the word you, which automatically sounds like an accusation, you start with I, which simply expresses your own feeling and experience. For example, "You are so distant lately" is an attack that will be met with a defense. But "I have been feeling a sense of distance between us lately" is an observation. It's unarguable because it's your feeling, and it invites curiosity rather than conflict. So how do you put this into practice? Find a quiet, neutral time. Not late at night when you're both exhausted, and not in the middle of another activity. Then you can begin. You start by setting a safe, collaborative tone. Something like, "Hey, can we talk for a few minutes? There's something that's been on my mind, and I want to share it with you because I value our connection." Then you use the I statement formula. You state your feeling, and you link it to a specific, non-judgmental observation. It sounds like this. "Lately, I've been feeling a sense of distance between us. For example, when I see you on your phone looking happy, but we don't share in that moment, it makes me feel disconnected and a little lonely." Or, "I've been feeling worried about our future together. When we talk about plans and it feels vague, I start to feel insecure about where we're heading." And then you open the door for her perspective. "I want to understand what your experience has been like. Can you tell me what's been going on from your side?" Now, pay close attention to the goal here. The goal is not to trap her in a lie or to force a confession. The goal is to bring the unspoken things out from the shadows and into the light. You are calmly presenting your reality and respectfully inviting her to share hers. Her response to this vulnerable yet strong approach will tell you everything you need to know. A person who is still invested in the relationship, even if they are struggling, will likely respond to your vulnerability with their own. They might soften, they might open up. But a person who has already emotionally checked out will often meet even this gentle approach with that same wall of defensiveness, denial, or indifference. And that reaction is, in itself, a clear answer. Once you have that answer, whether it comes through her words or through her reaction, you arrive at the final crossroads. From here, there are only two paths forward. One is the path of repair, the other is the path of release. How you walk down either one of those paths with your dignity intact, that is the final piece of our puzzle. So, you've had the talk. You've presented your truth with quiet strength, and you have your answer, whether it was communicated through words or in the cold silence of her reaction. You are now standing at that final crossroads we spoke of. This is where you make a choice. And this is where a timeless philosophy becomes more than just a concept, it becomes your compass. The ancient Stoics taught a simple but life-altering idea: to separate what is within your control from what is not. You cannot control her feelings, her choices, or her past actions. Trying to do so is the source of all suffering. But you have absolute, unshakable control over your own response, your own integrity, and the standards you set for your own life. Acting from this place is the very definition of dignity. From here, you have two paths. The first path is repair. This path is only possible if her response showed genuine remorse, a willingness to be vulnerable, and a clear stated desire to fight for the connection. Repair requires two people with their hands on the rope, pulling in the same direction. It's more than just words, it's a commitment to action, brutally honest conversations, perhaps seeking guidance from a professional, and actively rebuilding the trust and intimacy that has been lost. It is a difficult road, but it is a noble one if, and only if, you are both walking it together as equals. The second path is release. This is the path you must take if her response was more denial, more deflection, more indifference. Releasing someone is not an act of anger or failure. It is one of the most profound acts of courage and self-respect you will ever perform. It is the quiet, firm acknowledgement that you cannot force someone to value you, to meet you halfway, or to care. It is accepting reality for what it is, not what you desperately wish it would be. And this brings us to the most crucial lesson of all, which applies to whichever path you choose. You walk it with your head held high. If you choose repair, you do so as a partner, not as a warden constantly monitoring her for mistakes. You must be willing to truly forgive and rebuild. If you choose release, you do so cleanly and with honor. There is no begging, there are no vengeful social media posts or angry late-night texts. You do not play the victim, because you are not one. You are a man who is brave enough to seek the truth and strong enough to act on it. Whether you are now rebuilding a relationship or rebuilding your life on a new foundation, the next chapter has one central focus: you. The work must now turn entirely inward, to forging your own path forward and building a life so fulfilling that your peace is never again held in someone else's hands. And that is the final and most rewarding mission. And so you have made your choice. The path ahead is now clear, and the noise has faded. This moment is not an ending. It is a powerful, intentional beginning. This is the chapter where you stop analyzing the past and start actively building your future. This is the part where you rebuild your kingdom. Your kingdom is everything that makes you a whole, strong, and centered individual, completely independent of anyone else's opinion or affection. It's the energy you will now reclaim and reinvest into the pillars of your own life. It's pouring your focus back into your work, your craft, your mission on this earth, not as a mere distraction, but a true expression of your purpose. It's reconnecting with your physical self, the gym discipline, the nourishment of good food, the mental clarity that comes from pushing your body to its limits. It's rediscovering the passions and hobbies you may have let slide. It's reaching out and strengthening the bonds with the brotherhood of good men in your life, the friends who fuel your strength, not drain your energy.